Good evening, you are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. What can we expect in the upcoming ASEAN Summit on the Myanmar crisis? And Singapore announced a major cabinet reshuffle. That's coming up. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin retains a stable approval rating at 67% in April 2021, according to a recent report by Merdeka Centre. The figure shows an improvement compared to the 63% recorded at the end of January this year.
Muhyiddin's approval remained relatively steady since he took office last year, ranging between 74% and 63% throughout. The report indicated that Muhyiddin had the strongest support among Malays at 83%, while retaining a 30% among Chinese nationals and 66% among Indian nationals. The same survey also showed that 70% respondents indicated their satisfaction with the way Muhyiddin's administration is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Merdeka Centre conducted the survey among 2,111 electorates in Peninsular Malaysia, aged 21 and above on 31st March to 12 April 2021.
The federal government has approved Sarawak government's request to purchase its own COVID-19 vaccines for the use of the people, said Deputy Chief Minister Dato' Amar Douglas Ugah Embas. Douglas, who is also the State Disaster Management Committee Chairman, said the approval was given during his meeting with Coordinating Minister for the National COVID-19 Immunisation Programme, Khairi Jamaluddin, in Putrajaya recently.
Following that, he said the State COVID-19 Advisory Group SCOVAG had been given the responsibility to discuss about the purchase with the vaccine suppliers. A total of 1,278 individuals from high-risk groups and senior citizens aged 60 and above are scheduled to receive the vaccine at the stadium today. On March 18, Ugah was reported as saying that the Sarawak government had sent a letter to the federal government regarding its intention to purchase COVID-19 vaccines for the state.
We are continuing our conversation about the environment. One key theme in the ongoing climate summit hosted by the United States is the economic benefits of climate action, which emphasizes on job creation. How can Malaysia learn and benefit from this? Secretary General for the Ministry of Environment and Water, Datuk Seri IR Dr. Zaini Ujang, weighs in.
And government has agreed on 6 initiatives. One is strengthening the country's climate change governance through the involvement of all stakeholders. So among other things we want to do is to have climate change acts. We want to have a clear governance in terms of determining what will be our limits, say for example on carbon emission. So indirectly we are opening up new sectors. When we reduce the existing, say for example, GHG loaded sectors, I would say, yeah. So in other, so that's one thing. Second point is the implementation of various programs to drive climate change agenda by mobilizing manpower, resources, and financial allocation. So this is what you mentioned earlier. I give an example. In the future, probably in our R&R, people are, more cars, EV cars or hydrogen cars will be there. So the facilities is to be made available for them. And this is new sector. And we realize that in our petrol station now, we have a lot of foreigners. Probably by reducing the amount of fossil fuel requirements on the street. So indirectly, the new sector will be more palatable for locals to work with in the sector in the future.
The 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is set to hold a special summit tomorrow to discuss peaceful resolutions to the Myanmar crisis. Though with much opposition, the leader of Myanmar's junta, Min Aung Hlaing, is set to attend the summit. Meanwhile, several leaders will also skip this year's meeting, including Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte and Thai Prime Ministers Prayut Chan-o-cha. What is the significance of this summit in resolving the conflict at hand for the region? We speak to Chairman on Malaysian Advisory Group on Myanmar, Tan Sri Syed Hamid Albar, on what to expect.
It is a very crucial meeting because there are three things important for ASEAN to remember. One is the world is looking at ASEAN's credibility. Two is looking at ASEAN's relevance. Three, ASEAN always been talking about its centrality, that it can solve its own problem and it wants to solve its own problem. So that's how important it is to ASEAN.
Therefore, what role does ASEAN play in facilitating peace in Myanmar and the region?
Both parties have to start trusting ASEAN. And secondly, they must appoint a person to become the facilitator of negotiation. And negotiation always start very difficult, complex, looks impossible, but there must be someone that can bring the parties together. And I think if we can send a message in order to make the parties to come together, is that do they want to see that Myanmar, a very rich country in natural resources and a population of 50 million, become a failed state in ASEAN. ASEAN cannot afford it. Myanmar cannot afford it. The people cannot afford it. Now there is people's empowerment, so the military must understand that, and the people must be patient to see a solution. So we will have a peaceful region, peaceful Myanmar, and peaceful neighbors.
Can ASEAN maintain its centrality in issues of regional security by navigating the Myanmar crisis successfully? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our panelists ahead of the ASEAN Special Summit on Myanmar tomorrow. We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
Untuk memastikan Malaysia ada ke depan dan maju. Induknya adalah Melayu.
Balik kepada support system. This is orang yang membuat polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita sudah tentu dia akan datang daripada pemimpin wanita.
Untuk memastikan Malaysia ada ke depan dan maju. Induknya adalah Melayu.
Balik kepada support system. This is orang yang membuat polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita sudah tentu dia akan datang daripada pemimpin wanita.
Kini berwajah baru.
Ini pula susulan khas pesawat Back Air di Kazakhstan. Pesawat berkenaan dilaporkan tergelincir 2 kali.
Notifikasi berita terkini dan navigasi.
Welcome back. In a major cabinet reshuffle, Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong announced 7 ministers who switched portfolios. This is 2 weeks after Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat had said that he will step aside as the leader of the 4th generation People's Action Party leadership team. All new appointments will take effect on May 15th after the next parliament sitting.
Lawrence Wong will take over the Finance Ministry from Heng. Trade and Industry Minister Chan Chung Sing will become Education Minister, taking over from Lawrence. Transport Minister Ong Ye Kung will be the next Health Minister, replacing Gan Kim Yong, who takes over as Trade and Industry Minister. Meanwhile, S. Iswaran will be Minister for Transport, Josephine Teo will be Minister for Communications and Information, and Tan Si Leng will be Minister for Manpower. Lee said that this round of cabinet changes will allow the 4G ministers to gain new experience and exposure and ready them to take over from him and his older colleagues.
As new ministers take on different portfolios, the question in many Singaporeans' minds would be, who will be the next in line to become the Prime Minister? Newly appointed Finance Minister Lawrence Wong seems to be an intriguing choice as he replaces the current Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat. We speak to Associate Professor of Law at Singapore Management University, Eugene Tan.
You know, that's a question that many Singaporeans had asked prior to today's announcement. And I suppose some people will feel that he's probably the clear front runner. But I think that would be getting ahead of ourselves. I think when you look at the finance ministry, Minister Lawrence Wong has been the second minister at MOF, Ministry of Finance, since 2016. And Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was probably looking at a seamless transition. The demands on Singapore's fiscal resources are increasing. The need to replenish, the past reserves are present, and there are growing demands, on the government coffers. So if you're looking at a seamless transition, then someone who has been at the finance ministry, who has been working on the budgets, who's very familiar, with the issues, the sort of, as well as issues over the horizon, then I think Minister Lawrence Wong, would be, the most intuitive choice. It is also an endorsement, right? It is certainly a recognition of his ability, to take on this important portfolio. And so I think, in many ways, it will stand him, as well as, the fourth generation leadership, as we call, the next generation of leaders in Singapore. It will stand them in very good state, to have the various ministers, being exposed, to different ministries, different challenges, new assignments, and more critically, how they work together, will be certainly something that will feature prominently between now and the next cabinet reshuffle.
Eugene adds that the decision by Prime Minister Lee to not name a successor is the right move, as the role should be decided by the next generation of leaders.
There is the commitment, to hand over Singapore, in a good shape. And so I see, this period as being a transitional one, where it is important, for the next generation of leaders to make the best of it, and to demonstrate to Singaporeans that they are equal to the task of governing Singapore, in a very challenging and uncertain time.
More than 100 migrants and refugees were feared to have drowned after a rubber boat capsized off the coast of Libya in recent days. Search and rescue team that arrived on the scene today saw at least 10 bodies near the wreck and have yet to find any survivors. The boat carrying 130 people on board, along with 2 other boats, were reported in distress on Wednesday in international waters off Libya. A rescue effort with the NGOs Ocean Viking and 3 merchant vessels was launched to find possible survivors. Since 2014, more than 20,000 migrants and refugees have died at sea while trying to reach Europe from Africa. The United States Senate has passed a bill that would help combat the rise of hate crime against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. This after a surge of hate crime against the community, often linked to rhetoric that blames Asian people for the spread of COVID-19.
The measure would expedite the review of hate crimes at the Justice Department and provide support for local law enforcement in response to thousands of reported violent incidents in the past year. The bill that was passed on a 94-1 vote was applauded by the U.S. President Joe Biden, who saw it as the next step in achieving justice and equality for the community. There has been a surge of crimes against those with Asian descent, which includes the killing of 6 Asian women in shootings in Atlanta last month.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news update on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Farhana Sheikh. We'll see you next week.
Sementara itu, semua sekolah yang terletak di zon merah COVID-19 di Sarawak ditutup selama 14 hari.
Pencegahan